Well, first I would like to welcome everyone here this morning. I'm Jason Smith, President at Texarkana College, and we're all here gathered today as we celebrate the life of H. Ross Perot, who passed away this morning. H. Ross Perot was a TC alum, and he was very proud of our college. He was a great supporter. He made many trips to this college over the years. Even recently he came up. He also had close relationships, of course, with family and friends in our community, his hometown, Texarkana, Texas. We have several people here today who are at this press conference, and I just want to mention a couple. First, we have one of Texarkana College's board member, Derek McGarry, is here. Thank you, Mr. McGarry, for being here. We also have one of our TC Foundation board members here, Don Morris. Mr. Morris, thank you for being here, sir. H. Ross Perot has had such an incredible impact on Texarkana College, on his hometown, Texarkana, on his state, Texas, for his nation, the United States of America, but also international. Ross Perot has had an impact all throughout the world, and it's because of his vision, because of his work ethic, and the education background that he had, and the smarts that he gained from that education that catapult him to the highest levels that could be imagined. He is known as a visionary in technology. He began here in Texarkana with a very humble beginnings, and we're standing in a replica of his father's cotton store. And I think it's a humble reminder for all of us of anyone who achieves a quality education, has a great work ethic, and has aspirations can accomplish anything. We have our students and former students who have come to us, who have had wonderful impacts, and they continue to have wonderful impacts. And I just love his story. I love how Texarkana College took that story and made an H. Ross Perot Leadership Museum within our library, where we're standing now. Ross Perot was a visionary from the get-go. When he first started TC, they were located in downtown, connected to the Texarkana ISD High School. He led a petition to move Texarkana College to this current location as a college student. As a college student, he was also president of his class here at Texarkana College. He was also editor-in-chief of the yearbook, which he helped found. He went on from TC to the United States Naval Academy. From there, he was hired by IBM in Dallas, and his vision never stopped. He had ideas that IBM could more personalize and produce better technology to meet the needs of corporate America better. For whatever reason, IBM didn't take him up on that vision, so he started his own company, EDS. And everyone knows the story of EDS. He had an impact not only in America, but international. He's also remembered as the person who never forgot our fallen. We had men and women who were left behind in Korea and in Vietnam, and even during the Cold War. There's many missions that we don't know about that he was responsible for, of getting Americans back to the United States. Even back in the late 1990s, there was a young lady who got trapped in China during World War II, and they never let her out. He found out about it. He did everything he could to get her out of China, and he did. And that's a story we don't hear about, we don't know about, but he did that constantly, looking out for Americans, looking out for those who were in need. He did that for TC as well. There were times we were in need, and he came to help us out. I want to say at this time, I want to introduce our next speaker, Dean Mary Ellen Young. She is our Dean of Liberal and Performing Arts, and she's going to share her connection with the Perot family as well. So Dean Young.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. It is with a heavy heart that I speak to you today. On behalf of the students, faculty, and staff at Texarkana College, I would like to offer our thoughts and prayers to the Perot family, to Margot, his wife, Betty, his sister, the Perot children and grandchildren, for whom he truly loved. Mr. Perot left a legacy of leadership that will continue to bless Texarkana College for generations to come. During his time at TC, he served as student council president. He also served as treasurer for Phi Theta Kappa International Honor Society. He was a distinguished alum for Phi Theta Kappa internationally. He also worked with the Spanish Club, the Writers Guild, and so many other endeavors. He was in the who's who of Texarkana College. His work and accomplishments were an inspiration to our students. Several years ago, he offered and entertained our students at his office, and he personally toured them in his archives and shared each one of those with them. And in his typical Ross Perot self, he pulled up a chair and visited with each student individually to find out what their major was, to find out where they were going in life and how he could help. Mr. Perot also exhibited characteristics of the Boy Scout oath and law: trustworthiness, honesty, and truly kind. He was such a kind spirit, and at Texarkana College, the faculty, staff, and students will always remember that. And on a personal note, on behalf of my family, 2 of my brothers worked for Mr. Perot at EDS, and he and my father, the late Dr. Mitchell Young, were good friends. He delivered my father's eulogy 11 years ago, and to that we will eternally be grateful. Thank you so much. And again, Mr. Perot's leadership legacy will go on for generations to come at Texarkana College and will continue to bless our students. Thank you. And at this time, I would like to call Brian Gazel, the Executive Director of Texarkana Regional Arts and Humanities Council.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. Certainly, our condolences go out to the Perot family and also all of those employees of the Perot systems at this time. Of course, I'm here to talk about a little bit about Ross Perot and the Perot Theater, but I grew up, honestly, riding to Highland Park School on my bicycle, going past his house every morning for years and years. And believe it or not, my dad actually was his father's physician. And I remember sitting on Gabriel Ross Perot's lap and hearing stories about Ross Perot. So it was sort of interesting how everything comes around, that goes around. But what really is important is that Mr. Perot, and along with his sister Betty, were the ones who made it possible to renovate what became known as the Perot Theater. It was not named after Mr. Perot or Betty Perot. It was really named after his parents, their parents, because they loved their parents dearly, and they remembered growing up at the Paramount Theater every Saturday evening, sitting on row S, it was, on the right-hand side of the theater, and going there because they had air conditioning, because it was one of the few air-conditioned buildings in downtown Texarkana at the time. And his parents would take the 2 children every Saturday night to see a movie at the Perot Theater. Well, the Perot Theater ultimately fell into disrepair in the 70s, and there was a group of people who wanted to renovate the Perot Theater and make it into a community theater. Unfortunately, they had no idea how much money it would take to renovate a beautiful theater such as the Perot. And they fell very short of their goal of the renovation, the cost of the renovation. And people were talking about how can we make the Paramount Theater into a world-class performance space, and Ross Perot's name came up. And he was approached, and he and his sister agreed to donate almost $1 million of Perot Foundation money to renovate the Perot Theater. If it had not been for Mr. Perot and his wife Betty, we would never have had the Perot Theater in Texarkana. It is one of the few crown jewels that we have, and it is indeed an outstanding performance space known throughout this entire region. And again, they named it in honor of their parents, Gabriel Ross and Eula Mae Perot. So we certainly welcome all of the many things that Mr. Perot did in this community. And as always, he stood up, and we've already heard these stories. He always was a stand-up guy. And many of you may know that Mr. Perot, we would not even get a call. All of a sudden, the box office door would burst open, and Mr. Perot would come running through the theater and goes, "How's my theater?" You know, seriously, he really would. And so he'd walk through the whole theater. Sometimes he'd be wearing his hat, or sometimes he'd be in a pair of shorts. It really didn't matter. But whenever he was near Texarkana, he would stop off at the Perot Theater and look at his theater. So I certainly offer again my condolences to the Perot family. I next would like to introduce James Henry Russell, who was the predecessor to being Dr. Smith as the president of Texarkana College. James Henry is now the executive vice president and CFO of BWI Industries.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you for the wonderful opportunity to be here today. Brian talking about no notice and Mr. Perot just busted in the door rings true. It seems like he would always know the one day a year I would not have a tie on, and that's when Mr. Perot would arrive at Texarkana College. But I am a quick learner, so I quickly always had a jacket and a tie in the closet of my office with strict orders downstairs when they saw that car pull up to call. So I can put a tie and coat on, I think, faster than anybody in Texarkana to be ready for Mr. Perot's surprise visits. Dr. Smith, thank you so much for the invitation to be here, to be part of the day. Mr. Perot has been such an impact, and it's very nice of you to invite me to be here along with you. Mary Ellen did such a great job talking about the impact of Mr. Perot, and also expressing our sorry to so much of the Perot family. I also want to mention Curtis Fortner and Sandra Dotson. Curtis is Mr. Perot's chief of security, and somebody that we had a great relationship with over time, and I know he is absolutely heartbroken this morning. Sandra Dotson, Mr. Perot's longtime assistant, they weren't employees. They were part of Mr. Perot's family, and I know they are hurting so much. Mindy Preston from TC is out on vacation. She had such a special relationship with all the Perot group. So definitely everybody's in our thoughts and prayers. To all the media that's here, thank you for being here today. Christy, the Texarkana Gazette, all of you I know are going to do a great job, but I tell you, the Texarkana Gazette had a special place in Mr. Perot's life and heart. I don't think he was ever in this town and ever did a presentation without talking about his days of delivering the paper on horseback or on bicycle, and all the different people in different walks of life that he met and formed early wonderful impressions about because of his time working, I think at 11 or 12 years old, delivering paper. So the media was important to Mr. Perot, and I think it's quite an honor for this quick for y'all to be covering him today. I had something in common with Ross Perot that I am extremely happy about. A little bit of age gap between us, although people say I act really old. But we had the same boyhood idol. Most of you, again, if you heard Mr. Perot speak in town, Mr. Perot's boyhood idol was Josh Morris Jr. And my boyhood idol was Josh Morris Jr., and he's still one of my idols today. In fact, at 7:50 this morning, I got a call from Mr. Morris, and he is the one that told me about Mr. Perot. passing away. And, you know, and I could tell how upset Mr. Morris was about this lifelong friend and just hero to all of us that it passed away, a neat person. We've known Mr. Perot's health has been ailing. Didn't know it was at this point quite yet. But last Friday, my son and I were driving back from College Station, Texas, bringing a load of furniture for my daughter. So we had a little time. But I don't know what most people listen to on the road, but we listened to the 1992 presidential debate, the entire hour and a half of Mr. Perot, President Bush, and at that time Governor Clinton. And it was just so neat. We could listen to the whole thing, we really did. And it was so neat to hear what Mr. Perot was saying then and what this country needed to fix and work on. And some of it has been done, but a lot of the things he predicted would come true if we didn't do some things did. So he's just an absolute legacy. You know, Mr. Perot has obviously changed my life. He has changed Texarkana College's life. He has changed this community's life and future. He's changed the world. But on February 14th, 2012, he did something again that just impacted me and this whole community. Mike Sandiford, the current in Texarkana College board president, and I got a 15-minute appointment with Ross Perot to plead our case. Texarkana College was in a very different time then. And we needed some help, and we needed it in the worst way. We made a few changes. We're still above water, but only barely. Had a huge election coming, and we needed something to push us over the finish line. We had our 15 minutes with Mr. Perot. He asked us what we needed. I think Mike Sandiford threw out we needed $5 million. And I said, oh, this is dead. We're out of here. And all Mr. Perot said was, that's a lot of money. And we said, yes, it was. He said, well, I'll think about it and let you know. And we never thought we would hear another thing. We thought we got to spend a cool day with a hero and legend. But we were on the George Bush Turnpike, and a number came up on my cell phone and said, private call. And I answered, and it said, please hold for Mr. Perot. And Mr. Perot said, if I give you $1 million, it's a 30-second call. If I give you $1 million a year for 5 years, will you make it? And I said, Mr. Perot, we'll do everything we can. He said, I didn't ask you if you would do everything that you can. I asked you if you will make it. And I immediately said, yes, sir, Mr. Perot, we'll make it. And then that turned into the community challenge, where not only did he lend his money to us with the first $1 million to make cash flow until November, but he lent his name and his power and his story. He did billboards, he did commercials. He talked about the impact that Texarkana College had on a poor kid from Texarkana and where it can lead you. And it helped push us over that 50% mark we needed for that election. And it changed the life of this college. It changed the life of this community. It changed the life of me. And that's going to last forever. So we have some very sad news today about Mr. Perot passing away after an 89 unbelievable years of life. But you know, I think what's so important, it's not so much how you live, because we're all here for a short blip of time, but it's what your legacy is going to be. And if you look around this absolutely beautiful Leadership Museum that Susie Irwin and Tracy Pittman and Katie Andrews put together, it documents a life very well lived, but it also documents an incredible legacy. One of the greatest things Mr. Perot ever said to us here at Texarkana College, one of the many times we had him back on this campus to say thank you, about year 2 or 3 after we kind of got out of the mess we were in and we're moving forward, he whispered, he said, stop thanking me. He said, I give lots of people money. Texarkana College in this community actually did something with the money that I gave to you, and I'm proud of you. Well, we are so proud and so thankful of Ross Perot and the unbelievable life and legacy that he lived and the impact that he made on Texarkana College, not just during this time in these last few years, but on this impact that is going to last for absolutely ever in this community. Such a well-lived life. We're so proud of Mr. Perot and so thankful for his help. And Dr. Smith, thank you so much for letting me be a part of today. Thank you.
that concludes our press conference. I do want to say thank you again for the media being here, and thank you for all those that were here as well. And again, we say thank you to the Perot family, and we do share our condolences. Thank you.